I think we all have an older video game that we really love, but can recognize that due to the fact that it's old, there are various reasons why it is no longer as easily accessible for newer players to enjoy. It could be a lack of the older hardware, or perhaps copies of the game are rare and go for a lot online. Even if they do have access to the game, there are chances that it could have outdated design decisions that longtime fans are used to, but newer audiences probably would not like. Same with the graphics, outdated due to older hardware limitations or running at lower resolutions. Yes, we all have that game that could really use an update that fixes all of the problems that time left them with. And that game for me was Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne until July 20th, 2020. That Nintendo Direct was kinda lame, wasn't it? The Cadence of Hyrule DLC was alright, but other than that, yeah.
I want a rematch.
But then at the end we see the Atlas logo, and I'm sure all of our first thoughts were, oh, they finally porting Persona 5 to the... Wait, hold on, that's Nocturne? What? Nocturne HD? What? Holy shit! And then after that, we finally get a trailer for Shin Megami Tensei 5, a game that we haven't gotten news on since 2018? Needless to say, I was hyped. I told all my friends about it, drank really heavily that night, had literally the worst hangover of my life the next day. It was actually a pretty traumatic experience. I don't drink much anymore. But now, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster is out, and it certainly is an HD version of Nocturne. I guess I don't know what I was expecting. I was hoping that they might take the chance to fix some of the problems Nocturne had, but it's just the remaster that does fix one minorly annoying thing with Demon Fusion, but that's kinda it. There are other good things about the remaster though, and honestly, having an excuse to talk about Nocturne makes me love this release that much more. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne was released on February 20th, 2003 only in Japan, and it was the first mainline SMT game to utilize 3D graphics. Not the first in the series though, that was the 2002 Japanese-only Shin Megami Tensei 9 for the Xbox. Yeah, I don't get it. A year later, a second edition of the game was released with the subtitle Maniacs. This was the version that we got in the West, simply titled Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, probably because we never got 1 or 2 here in the West. And then in 2008, as a part of a limited edition of Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner 2 Raidou Kuzunoha vs King Abaddon, there was a third release of Nocturne with the subtitle Maniacs Chronicle. Each version makes additions to the game that relate to the plot, so I'll start by talking about the base story and then what Maniacs and Chronicle added to it. In Nocturne, you play as nameless protagonist, canon name Naoki Kashima, who goes to a hospital with his 2 friends, Chiaki Hayasaka and Isamu Nita, to meet up with their teacher, Yuko Takao. On the way there, we meet a man named Gyoji Hijiri, who informs us about some cult stuff going on, and inside the hospital we meet Hikawa, leader of said cult, who would have killed the main character if not for Miss Takao stepping in. So we go to the roof with Miss Takao and the world fucking ends. Barely a half hour in and the world folds in on itself. The reason why Miss Takao wanted you to meet her at the hospital was because it would be the only safe place when the world ended. In between the world's end and waking up afterwards, a mysterious young boy takes interest in our main character and feeds him a bug called a Magatama that turns him into a half-demon. He is now the Demi-Fiend. So from here you find out what happened to the other survivors and why this all happened. It doesn't take long to figure out what's going on. Basically what happened is the conception, the act of the world ending so it can be remade. In order to create the new world, one must approach the big glowing sun-moon thing called Kagasuchi with a few things. A bunch of power in the form of Magasuhi, which is the source of demons' power, to summon a god to support their vision of the new world, also referred to as a reason. Demons cannot have a reason, and since the Demi-Fiend is now half-demon, he cannot create a reason of his own. But he will be the one to decide which reason will reach Kagasuchi. So the game's plot revolves around power struggles between different factions, and you get to see each reason come to be from the friends you once had, and Hikawa. And you get to side with one or side with none, resulting in 5 different endings. Now included in the Maniacs version of the game is a subplot where a mysterious old man bestows upon you a candelabra, renamed to a menorah in the HD release, which is one of many menorahs that belong to him. The rest have been stolen by fiends, these skeleton boys, and because the menorahs attract each other, the old man tasks you with retrieving them and returning them to their pedestals in the Labyrinth of Amala. These bosses are so cool, and by completing the Labyrinth of Amala, you unlock the 6th ending that includes the ultimate boss of the game. And hey, you know who else has one of these menorahs?
And there's our fiend right now. Let's see what you got.
Yes, Dante from the Devil May Cry series is included amongst the fiends in this game, like, for real. Games just don't do this anymore, do they? It's not just a cameo, it's not just an extra guest appearance, it's a guest character that directly relates to the plot. Only games I could think of that did this was Tekken 7 when Akuma was hired to kill Heihachi, and I think Soul Calibur 6 had Geralt from The Witcher show up in the game's plot. I didn't play through the plot of that game. This is one of my favorite guest appearances in any game though. Honestly, more games should do this. Now for the Chronicle release of the game, all that was really changed was that they replaced Dante with the protagonist of the PS2 Devil Summoner duology, Raidou Kuzunoha the 14th. I love Dante in this game, but honestly Raidou Kuzunoha is pretty cool too. He was a fun protagonist to play as, not to mention how flashy his moves are, like damn. I prefer Dante wholeheartedly, but this is still cool. Like I said, the Chronicle version of the game was a Japanese only release, but when the HD remaster was announced, it was revealed that it would be the Chronicle version of the game. On one hand, cool, we're getting a version of the game that we didn't get before. But on the other hand, I want Dante. Don't worry though, Dante is included in the HD release as DLC. There's no official statement as to why this is, but it's safe to assume that it's because of some corporate negotiations with Capcom now that both franchises are so popular. Regardless, I didn't mind forking over the extra $10 for Dante, turning this $50 release into a $60 release, for an HD port with minor changes, not including the other 2 DLC packs. I'm getting ahead of myself right now. The point is that the plot of Nocturne is rad, and I think what brings it all together is the game's art direction. Series veteran and character designer Kazuma Kaneko is the overall art director of Nocturne, and he really hit it out of the park on this one. The overall vibe has this digital yet ancient look to everything, even down to the Demi-Fiend's tattoos being tribal in nature but looking artificial due to the glowing outlines they have. Same could be said with some of these dungeon designs. There's a lot of talk of networks in this world, so everything having a digital look to them like the cylinder save points or the Amal network itself makes sense, but everything is still demonic in nature. So you got temples and obelisk dungeons that still harken back to the ancient ruins that they are. And this is the post-apocalypse, so there's a lot of areas that are modern abandoned buildings, so there's a lot of variety in areas within Nocturne. Kaneko's character designs fit perfectly in this world as well. I already mentioned the Demi-Fiend's design, but the rest of the cast look great as well. A lot of then fashion on these characters, like Chiaki's Jutes and Jank top. Each character's design is distinct, there's no way you would mistake one for the other, not to mention that you get to see them get all sorts of fucked up by the end of the game. Like, look at Hijiri, why doesn't he wear his hat? This shit's fucked up. There we go. And much like most Megami Tensei games post-Revelations Persona, Nocturne comes full with a masterful OST by the legend Shoji Meguro, along with Toshiko Tasaki and Kenichi Tsuchiya. Very grungy compared to the usual poppy Persona affair, Nocturne's soundtrack fits the desperate and ruthless nature of a demonic apocalypse by having sick freaking guitar riffs and demonic voices. And of course, Nocturne has some more somber and relaxing but eerie tracks as well. this a game that you can actually play? Ah, right, gameplay. Well, luckily for us, the gameplay includes one of the best RPG turn-based systems ever. The press turn system makes its debut here, and the way it works is one of those simple concepts that begs to be taken full advantage of. I did not mean to make that sound erotic. The way it works is that you get a turn for each party member in your active team, represented by these demon heads. You can have a max of 4 party members on your team, so you'll have a max of 4 turns at the start of your team's phase. Do any action, you use one of your turns. And of course, once you use all your turns, it becomes the enemy's turn phase. What makes this interesting is that if you exploit the enemy's weakness or land a critical hit on them, you gain an extra turn, represented by the demon head now glowing. If you continue to exploit enemy weaknesses or critting the enemy, you can continue to get extra turns as long as you have turn heads that aren't glowing. So you can get 4 extra turns per phase potentially, resulting in a total of 8 turns per phase. Now if you miss an attack or use an element or attack that the enemy nullifies, you will lose a turn. And if you use an attack that the enemy absorbs or reflects, your whole turn phase ends right there. So this battle system is all about learning your enemy and using their weaknesses against them. The same goes for the enemy too, they can gain and lose turns the same way you can. Beyond the turns in the system, another major mechanic in this game is buffing and debuffing. Any ability with the ending Kaja on it will buff one of your party's stats by 1 stage. Any ability ending with Unda will debuff one of your enemy's stats by 1 stage. Buffs and debuffs can be used for 4 upgrades or downgrades for each stat. So you will always start at your base stats you have, and each stat can be brought up or down by 4 stages, and you'll be doing this all the time in this game. Plenty of RPGs have stat buffs be a minor part of their system, so most would treat this game system the same way. But you really need to exploit this mechanic if you want to stand a chance against some of these bosses. Thankfully, you have full customization over your party in this game. Demons are both your enemies and allies in this game. Sure, you can beat the shit out of any given demon you're up against, or you can converse with them to try to get them to join your side, as long as they aren't higher level than you are. The demon negotiation has a lot of factors into it. What abilities you have, which character is talking to the demon, whether or not the other enemy demons want to interrupt you, maybe another party member will chime in. It can even depend on what phase the Kagetsuchi's in. Yeah, as you walk around, the Kagetsuchi will change its phase like a moon would, from new to full, back to new again. This can impact various aspects in the game, such as special chest contents, certain abilities, and of course, demon negotiation. The demon negotiation is weird. It's kind of hard to tell what answers the demon will like, and when they ask for an item you don't have, it basically ruins the conversation right there. Trial and error is a big part of it, but it's definitely a mechanic that was improved in later games. Fortunately, there is another way to get new demons. Demon Fusion, another series staple, is here, and it once again is one of the most interesting mechanics in this game. Take 2 demons, put them together, and you get a new demon, like Jack Frost. Of course, abilities from the previous 2 demons will be carried over to the new demon. In the original release, these were chosen at random, but fortunately in the HD release, they added the feature to select which abilities you want, which works so much better. This is the only thing mechanically that they fixed in the HD release. As for the Demi-Fiend, in order to get new abilities for him, you have to level him up while having a Magatama, that bug thing that the boy used to turn the main character into a demon, equipped that has abilities attached to it. You obtain the next ability upon leveling up as long as the Magatama is shaking in the menu. The abilities aren't the only benefit of Magatamas, however. Each Magatama will both impact the Demi-Fiend's stats as well as his resistances and weaknesses. So there's a lot of character customization within the game. So overall, Nocturne is a really good game, and it's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. Right, random encounters, one of my least favorite mechanics in RPGs. It sucks too because a lot of my favorite RPGs have them, and they can work in some games. Or I can at least look past it for my overall experience with the game. Nocturne's, though, is kind of fucked. So there's this indicator in the bottom right corner that stays blue in safe areas, but will flash from yellow to red in dangerous areas to indicate a battle is near. Sounds okay in theory, but it kinda doesn't work sometimes. Like normally it's fine, right? Flashes red, oh, there's a battle. Then almost immediately after that, another battle, even though the meter was yellow. Like sometimes it feels like you can't get anywhere without going through like 80 battles. Especially when each battle barely gives you any XP despite taking forever to get through. Yeah, grinding in this game was never that fun for the most part. Either you get a ton of battles that give little XP, or when you do get battles that give good XP, now they barely want to show up. Thankfully, the HD remaster adds a dungeon that makes grinding a cakewalk. Where the Demi-Fiend was born is a new extra dungeon in which these Mitama enemies can drop either thin grimoires that give you a set amount of XP, or thick grimoires that give you enough XP to level up no matter how much XP you need. Thank god! What would normally take hours only takes a single hour. And there's another dungeon with a similar concept, but instead of XP items, you get items to sell for a ton of money. My only complaint is that since these two dungeons are available from the start, the game can be made a little too easy if you abuse them. Like, you could be at level 99 with max money within the first few hours of the game if you wanted to. They probably should have locked these dungeons until the end game so you can't just blast through the game. But that's okay, they locked them by making them DLC. Okay, so the HD Remaster is definitely the definitive version of Nocturne. If you want to play Nocturne, play this version. But they made some really odd decisions when they developed the new release, like making 2 extra grinding dungeons DLC. But there's no reason these dungeons need to be DLC, especially for $7. Oh, but that's not all. We also got the Shin Megami Tensei BGM pack. Oh, you mean like the one in Persona 5 Strikers that has almost every battle theme from the previous Persona games that you can switch to random? Kinda, I mean, you get the main battle and overworld themes from 1, 2, 4, and Apocalypse, but they only work on the large map and you can't set it to random, meaning you have to go into the settings and manually change the songs yourself. $8. That's more than the map packs. Like, maybe if you could set it to random, or at least set it so like 1's theme plays in place of the town theme and 4's theme plays in place of the Amala theme, I'd still say that's too much, but at least would have made them cool to have. At least there is one free DLC. The Merciful difficulty. I guess since the probably should have been in the base game dungeons are $7, I guess this is a compromise? $27 for DLC for a glorified port is way too much. Those dungeons should not have been DLC. The music pack isn't worth it, and while the Dante DLC is worth it, without it we still get a version of the game we never initially got in the West. So really the dungeon DLC is the only required one for this game. As for the remaster itself, again it's fine, definitely the version everyone should play, but they made so many odd choices of what not to remaster. The music is still compressed, which means it sounds kinda muffled, and I get why. The music tracks in the game are somewhat dynamic, having different guitar solos and whatnot, so these tracks probably don't have uncompressed versions. I get that, but like, why not HD remaster the soundtrack? The pre-rendered cutscenes have this ugly blurred border and look mildly upscaled. Obviously the aspect ratio of 2003 is different than that of 2021, I get that, but like, why not HD remaster the cutscenes? The encounter rate still sucks as much as it did in the original version of the game, and the enemy XP rates are still way too low for how much XP is required to level up sometimes. That's how it was before and they were trying to make it a faithful port, I get that, but like, why not HD remaster the balancing? I understand that remastering all this stuff on top of the game itself is a lot of work, and maybe they didn't have the budget for that. Then why release it at $50? This game should have been $30, $40 max. The game as it is now, on top of all that DLC, will run you a total of $77, not including tax. I really do love this game, and this remaster is really nice to have. Being able to select the fused demon abilities is a godsend. The HD models and textures breathe new life into the artistic style of this game and look amazing. And, my personal favorite addition, they added voice acting to the game. Yeah, the original game had no voice acting at all, save for a few enemy grunts and yells. I kinda like the lack of voice acting in the original, sort of added this eerie vibe to the whole thing. But to be honest, the voice acting adds a lot to the game, and it really is cool having these lines spoken to me this time around. This might be why the game is $50 right now, but I still feel like with how much the DLC is, for a remaster that feels more like a supercharged port, I'd wait for a price drop if you want to pick this game up. And you really should when that price drop happens. The game is available for Steam, PS4, and Switch, though that Switch version has some lag issues. Yeah, Unity doesn't like Switch so much. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne is still an amazing game that I feel like is more deserving of a remake over a remaster. Even so, it has a style unique to itself and mechanics that make the game strategically fun despite some outdated mechanics. And even if it's a port that didn't quite impress me, I won't mind going back to that Vortex world all over again. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne sold very well in all regions that it released in, though it did not meet the sales that the publishers were hoping for. Nevertheless, the PlayStation 2 era of SMT games went on strong with 6 more games releasing on that console, all of which came to the West as well. The next in the mainline series of SMT games would not release until 2013 in both Japan and North America under the simple title of Shin Megami Tensei 4, which would later get its own spin-off sequel in 2016 under the title of Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. As for this HD remaster of Nocturne, it's done pretty well. It sold over 250,000 copies in Asian territories after its launch, and as of right now, there's no numbers of the West sales, but I'm gonna guess that it did pretty well too, so I'm sure it won't be the only HD remaster we'll get. Hopefully when they do another one, they will price it out more accordingly, although I feel like the other PS2 games won't need much maintenance. The two Raidou games could maybe use voice acting, but other than that, just some rebalancing would be needed. Persona 4 already has somewhat of an HD remaster in the form of Golden, so maybe some console ports would be cool. Now, the Digital Devil Saga duology needs an HD remaster. Not because it's got problems, far from it. Honestly, the first Digital Devil Saga game might be the best of any of the PS2 SMT games. It's so good. I just want an HD remaster so I can see it look all pretty. And Persona 3 might be the most difficult to remaster since there are two versions of the same game that have exclusive content to each of them, so this one might be more inclined for a remake. I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh on Nocturne HD's prices. It's just a shame to see the game I love so much get treated like a cash grab. It was just nice to see the mainline SMT franchise take the spotlight in place of its more popular spin-off for a moment. And for it to end up feeling like Atlus is using this to make a quick buck just sours the whole thing, and I really don't think they were. What they did add to the game was very much needed, but I just wish we could have had a little more of this HD remaster. Well, at least we still have Shin Megami Tensei 5 to look forward to. Apparently it's going to have a style more akin to Nocturne while having the gameplay of 4. Just in case you didn't know, those are the best parts of both of these games. If they follow through with that, this could be the greatest Shin Megami Tensei game of all time and finally dethrone Persona as the dominant Megami Tensei franchise. Too bad I'll never be able to top Jack Bros. That's the king right there, baby.